She's representing the children who are born here in the US. They are very ready to engage, and we have people from the embassy, we have people from universities, private sector. Please network with one another. I'll just take a couple of minutes to highlight the things that are in the program. We started strong, as I was saying earlier on, and we're going to finish strong.
I have a few housekeeping announcements to make. One of them, obvious, is about treasury. So I have a few people who haven't made their membership registrations, membership dues. So please
speak up a little bit. Can't hear.
Go to the microphone. Go to the mic.
The KESSA conference is more than just an academic gathering. It is a vibrant hub of cultural exchange, intellectual growth, and professional development. Here you'll find knowledge, connections, and inspiration to drive your passion forward. The 17th Annual Kenya Scholars and Studies Association Conference starts on September 5th to 6th, 2025 at Georgia State University Student Center in Atlanta. The conference theme is Future-Proofing Our Global Engagement, Adaptability for Sustained Impact in a Dynamic World. This highlighting the Kenyan diaspora's pivotal role in shaping a sustainable future.
We're going to come here next year, this month. I told her we're going to be here in KESSA. She asked me, what is KESSA? I shared this with her, and she was actually very excited, and she told me, I'm coming. I extended an invitation, and she told me she's going to visit us. About 2 days ago, I got a text message. She told me, I'm coming, and I'm bringing my father. Wow. And I have news. I was recently crowned Miss Kenya USA. So I want you to give that. She also has a platform, a very big platform, and we want to get to know her and know how we can engage with her. Nancy, would you mind coming to the floor?
Good morning, everyone.
Time because we want to have as much informal interactions as possible during the slotted break times. The program committee, the people who worked on the program, Mary Gitao and Moses Ochanji, I don't know if he's in the house already, they took a lot of time to make sure that they've included, those networking breaks, 30-minute breaks. You asked for this and they delivered. And we need all of us to help them ensure that those breaks are there when they were slotted to be there, because we want you to interact with one another. We are going to have 2 more keynote speakers this year.
In more formal way, and also provide resources. Ultimately, maybe come up with resources, ways in which you can get a resource that can help them become instructional leaders and make sense of their performance and how they consume research and so on. So anyway, the point what we have is they also mentioned the skills that they need to do. It was a bit surprising that most of the skills are very generic skills that they are hoping to learn in research, to communicate, to think critically and all that. Then we also have collected data, looked at how they do it. They use through, it's really popular now. Parents, it's not like those old days. Now parents are really aware of what is going on. They use SMSs, social media. Then there's a lot of learning management systems in Kenya. COVID also helped with that. And then we also look at this in their schools. They collect leadership data on that. Then for faculty, when we had the workshop, now when we brought everything together, there was a lot of very regular, it was a good forum for faculty to come together and really look at how they teach research and look at the responses. And the general...
They do that crop, trees as crops, and if you're cutting down 5% of your trees in a year and planting 5%, you're really not going to reach a point where you've replenished, you've extinguished your forests. The US is a good example. 67% of forests can be harvested in the US, 67%. Last year, they harvested only 2%, and they've been averaging around 2%. So if you're planting just that much, you're going to have forests forever.
But that's because we are only cutting 5% because the demand is not high.
Yeah.
If we decide to shift from what we are doing now to timber, that demand is going to go higher. What is the environmental impact of, like, because we've seen in Kenya where we've replaced our indigenous plants and trees and shrubs with what we consider to be faster growing species, and there's been devastating results.
Yeah.
How can we reconcile that?
So the solution here is there are countries that have capacity and they have more than they need. In that case, they play supply. And I think the government has to play a major role in trying to limit or to put limitations on how much trees can be harvested within the nation. I know in the US they have forests that you just can't touch. They are preserved, you can't touch. And the forests that can be harvested, they do have a limit on how much that can be done. Do we have that limitation back home? We have some forests people are not supposed to harvest. I know people sometimes do go in there and harvest, I know, and use those trees for fencing and all that.
The way it's been promoted, okay, there are a few scientists and engineers here. Even it was the same thing when we came, we thought it was specific research about Kenya.
All right.
A significant increase in these numbers. It's a gradual thing that keeps on increasing, driven by quest for higher education, employment prospects abroad, economic challenges within the country, as well as a concerted government policy. So currently it's estimated that at around 50,000 to 100,000 Kenyans migrate each year, and this fluctuates based on global economic conditions, employment prospects abroad, and again, it still goes back to these same aspects that are leading to the increase. And the top destinations, the USA is the most popular, followed by the UK, then the Middle Eastern countries, think of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, but also Canada, and a significant part of our people also migrate to African countries like South Africa and Uganda.
The case of selected counties in Kenya, and I'm specifically thinking about KESSA County and Bungoma County, and within the context of how do we integrate indigenous languages in promoting civic education. Here we're thinking informing the public about what the issues are, what their government is, what an MCA is, what a governor is, what the counties are. Thinking about elements of how the budget's used, how the people's money is being used, the projects that are being done, that are not being done, but also the broader question around, Professor Ngugi highlights this a lot, and we'll have him today in the evening for our for our dinner. This idea of the indigenization of indigenous languages, the broad acceptance of indigenous languages, which traditionally have been marginalized, because the ethos of a lot of his writing has been that if you don't know your language, you're a slave, right? And we write a lot, and we're currently speaking in a colonialistic language, which is ironical in its own way. But this is the challenge, and this is the challenge of of our time. How do we indigenize these languages? My background, my interest in working on this topic is, I'm a city boy. My dad is KESSA, and I'm not very good in speaking my father tongue. So this is a challenge even for me, because what happens when you get kids and you're not fluent in that language? It's a challenge. Or when you're you have two different indigenous languages and your parents just want to speak English or Swahili. So my mom is Luya, my dad is Kisii, but none of those languages were really spoken in the house. So I know more about my Luya side. So this was really an interesting question for me, I think also in terms of my background, but also in terms of my diaspora story. Because I've come to the US, I've been here almost 30 years. So in some ways, I'm more American than I'm Kenyan, because I've lived here longer than I lived in Kenya. So there's all these contradictions that come up. And I was really excited.
I find that in schools, we have things like no English, no service. One time I was the teacher at one of the schools, and I was given the task of writing those posts, and I said, please, I can't do this. I can't do this. I know it doesn't sound good to hear it, but I'm not going to do this. Yes, and with this, our education system remains in agony, because the language of the education is mostly English, and because of the content and story.
But not really to the vaccination itself. So we set ourselves out to look at the vaccine distribution process, not the vaccine itself, but the vaccine distribution process. And our research focused mainly on this area. After it comes from, wherever it's coming from, it arrives at Kitengela, the main place where vaccines in Kenya are stored, and then they're distributed to the various sub-counties or counties. That one is very well funded, very well accounted for. But the challenge is Kenya was moving by then, before COVID, to be a mid-level economy. And with that, it was to have reduced funding from these major donors. So what happens if you don't have a budget and there is reduced funding? So that's what we set ourselves to research about, what happens in this funding process. And distribution from the sub-county, we realized health in Kenya is devolved, iko kwa county. But the county government doesn't even have a line item for immunization or vaccination. We all know the value of that. So,
good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Professor Faith Miner from Texas Tech. Very excited because just this morning I met an alumni who was there as another graduate in Texas Tech. And so I'm telling him he has to shout out the name of Texas Tech to those who don't know us. So this morning, and I want to talk about the challenges that African immigrant professors are facing when they are going to leadership positions. And I want to acknowledge my colleagues that have been part of this research. Amani Zaire is from Tunisia. Vivian Tete is our our research assistant. And so I've been kind of a mentor for this group of research. So, why the interest? A few years ago, a position came up as an associate chair. Now, those who know much about academia, you know how that works. Associate chair is the most basic entry position if you have your trajectory to be in a leadership position in academia. Without an associate chair position, you can be a leader in any other areas, but if you're not a chair in your discipline, then you are not you are not given that trajectory, or the pathway, your pathway is not clear. So recently, this position,
where innovation is constantly celebrated, there's something fundamentally grounding about recognizing that the answers we seek may be nestled in the wisdom of those who came before us. Our roots, as rich and diverse as they are, offer us invaluable lessons lessons that, when combined with our academic pursuits, have the power to shape realities and craft a future that honors our heritage and progress. I lost my page. Self here. So let's touch on the ability we have as scholars, bridging the gap between academic research and real-world solutions. All too often, we produce research that looks good on paper, but when it comes time to apply those findings in the real world, there is a disconnect. Our research remains isolated in academic towers, detached from the everyday realities that our communities face. To put it plainly, our ideas remain theoretical, and the communities that need solutions the most are left untouched. Rotational grazing, moving their livestock across vast landscapes, depending on the availability of water and pasture. This practice helps prevent overgrazing, ensures biodiversity, and conserves water, particularly in the semi-arid regions of Kenya. When modern conservationists and development projects began engaging with the Maasai communities, they realized that the traditional knowledge of the Maasai aligned with the scientific principles of land management.
Eventful journey across the Atlantic to this place. Allow me to also mention that this is the longest I've traveled to come and make a presentation at a conference, but it is also where I have the thinnest audience, but I get that's a good thing, okay? So let me begin by saying that I have been involved in work in counterterrorism, and that is what informed this particular study and this particular presentation. A few years ago, I got involved with the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, and also the IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority for Development. And we do a lot of work in terms of dealing with the problem of terrorism in the Horn of Africa. As we all know, Kenya and Somalia are the two countries that have been hit most by terrorism in the Horn of Africa. Now, traditionally, 3 strategies have been used to counter terrorism. The first is what, as you can see there, we call the military strategy, whereby we involve espionage, intelligence, arresting culprits, or killing them, or bombing them, so that we get rid of them. That's the military strategy. There is also a strategy called the economic strategy, whereby any source of revenue that people who plot terrorism get revenue, we destroy them so that they have no money to organize and implement terroristic activities. The third is where we look to people that they look up to in high regard, like opinion leaders, religious leaders, political leaders, cultural leaders, because these are people with voices that these people can listen to. And then somewhere along the way, it was realized that there's actually another strategy that may be more powerful than those 3, which is the media, communication, and advocacy strategy. That whenever terrorists want to strike, they will use the media, and they will use propaganda for indoctrination and popularization of their strategies. And so that is where people like us come in. How do we use the media as a platform for counterterrorism? So that is what this presentation is going to be all about. Allow me quoting somebody who is not really a scholar, but a politician. And I'm one of those who have said popularly that as scholars, we need to consider information that comes from anybody who has valuable information to give, not just a scholar. Margaret Thatcher, she was British Prime Minister, I think from 1971 to 1988, 1979, sorry, to 1988. She once made this famous quote: "The media is the oxygen of terrorism." Do we agree? I believe everybody in this room has been affected directly or indirectly with a terroristic act. The media is the oxygen of terrorism, because terrorists
and its performers in the audience or the consumers, the terms which also have some problems and they might need a presentation of their own. But in this presentation, I borrow the term orature from Ngugi wa Thiong'o and Pio Zirimu to understand the nature and background of African literature. I like a different word to use for now, because that's the only word that has been existing in most of the general sources talking about these topics. And when I heard that this particular conference is going to be involving multidisciplinary topics, I was so happy, because I thought that at least this is another chance to talk about this topic in particular. And my argument is that today, orature remains a vital and dynamic form of expression in Africa, despite the fact that it has been marginalized by the dominance of written literature, predominantly influenced by colonial languages and Western literary traditions. So I'll give you a little bit of background. This is me in 2022 and 2023, sorry, and it was spring 2023, and I was working on my class project. My class name was Performing the Streets in Africa with Professor Solimar Otelo. And I'm locked inside the Lilly Library Archive at Indiana University, working on something completely different. When I came across the handwritten manuscripts of Petals of Blood by Ngugi wa Thiong'o that he wrote in 1977 while detained in the jail. And he donated those manuscripts in 2022 to Indiana University. So, so later that day, after, like, I was working on something completely different, and then I come across these, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there is something more important. So for some reason, I decided to move and go to a different library, Wells Library, and started searching in the African Studies collection for more of Ngugi wa Thiong'o's works. And there was this well-known book titled Decolonizing the Mind. And in fact, that book changed my life and my understanding of the so-called African literature. Because in it, he mentioned orature. And this background I have given, I believe, has set the mood of my understanding of all this and my research in this paper or presentation, that I have used an interesting term that I've heard in Professor Maina and Halkamo's presentation. They used metasynthesis. I did not have that, so I know now that I used metasynthesis. I went into the library.
I just sample a few of them just quickly, and just let us listen, and you will be amazed at how the things that they are speaking through music have far-reaching impact, or they actually speak the truth that we can't speak by our own mouth. I hope the sound is there. The sound is not there? There's no sound. Reject the Beat, that is a song by an artist called Sanuso. Let's listen to Ndora slums. And something interesting, that a lot of this music was being churned out by young people from low social economic spaces, and I think, and the idea was, I think that they're the most affected in this age demographic of the youth in Kenya. So listen to this one. Okay, listen to this one by artists called Douglas and Manzi, and this is the song that went viral. This is called Anguka Nayo.
Tusimame.
Let's Anguka Nayo sasa.
Tusimame. Jenzi, tuonyeshe moves.
There was one interesting song by Sauti Soul, and this one evoked the memories of the heroes like Tom Boyers and Ogingo, the late Jaramogi Odinga, and this also tells you how music connected these young people with the heroes of the Kenyan freedom independence freedom fighters. Okay, listen to this.
Watoto wetu wanazidi kuzikana na Tomboya ameshika tama, alituacha kama angali kijana. Je, angekuwa mambo yangekuwa sawa? Ndivyo walivyopanga Maulana. Elimu ulizoacha bado tunalipa na tumekopa zingine China, tukajenga reli.
If you analyze the themes in this song, or if you analyze the song text, basically it only talks about the love relationship of the young people. But after interrogating and doing our interviews, we realized that this song went viral because of the following. Okay, it's related with the demographic age of the Gen Z, and then also it came at a point where the beats that were used in the song related to the young people and evoked, the song had the ability to evoke party-like movement and the languages that are associated with the Kenyan youth, and also the social media hands like TikTok and X Spaces really helped in popularizing the music. I will use my 2 minutes remaining to invite you to listen to this small speech by Martin Luther King and see how it's still relevant to our Kenyan situation now.
It's so narrow.
It's your eyes.
Wacha nichukue na hii tena. I've gotten a new phone nimeweka mfukoni.
iPhone,
Android. No, I think the Samsung takes good